The contraction hit like a freight train, doubling me over the kitchen counter while Martha's voice droned on about proper breakfast preparation. Through the haze of pain, I watched my mother-in-law meticulously arrange her tea setting, not sparing me a single glance. Iris dear, you really should have planned better. Greg needs his protein shake before work, and here you are, making a scene. She clicked her tongue, the sound piercing through my skull like a needle. I gripped the counter harder, my knuckles turning white. Greg, I managed to gasp, I think the baby's coming. My husband didn't look up from his phone. Mom's right, you know. You've been slacking lately. Another contraction ripped through me, and this time I couldn't hold back the cry of pain. The timer on my phone showed 3 minutes between contractions. This wasn't a false alarm. Martha, please, I pleaded, I need to get to the hospital. She lifted her teacup with perfectly manicured fingers. When I was in labor with Greg, I finished preparing an entire dinner party before going to the hospital. Women these days are so dramatic. The room started spinning. I fumbled for my phone, but it slipped from my trembling hands, clattering to the floor. Greg finally looked up, annoyance creasing his forehead. Can you keep it down? I'm trying to read something important. That's when I felt it, the warm gush of fluid running down my legs. Martha's eyes widened in horror as she stared at the puddle forming at my feet. You're ruining my imported tiles, she shrieked, jumping up from her chair. I stumbled toward the door, my vision blurring. The pain was unbearable now, but something else was building inside me, something darker, harder. In that moment, watching my husband return to his phone while his mother fussed over her precious floors, something inside me snapped. I'll drive myself, I spat, grabbing my pre-packed hospital bag from the hallway. Greg called after me, his voice tinged with irritation. Don't forget to pick up my dry cleaning on your way back. I made it to my car, each step an agony of physical and emotional pain. As I pulled out of the driveway, I caught a glimpse of Martha in the window, already on her hands and knees with cleaning supplies. This was the moment, the exact moment, when I decided they would both pay for this. I didn't know how yet, but as my baby fought to enter this world, I made a promise to us both. This would be the last time they treated us like inconveniences in their perfectly ordered lives. The next contraction hit as I turned onto the main road, but this time I welcomed the pain. It fed something new growing inside me, something that would change everything. 3 days after bringing Emma home, I sat in our living room, cradling my daughter while Martha rearranged my furniture. Again. The scraping of wood against hardwood made Emma stir, but Martha kept pushing the armchair across the floor. This space needs proper feng shui, she declared, wiping sweat from her brow. No grandchild of mine will develop in a chaotic environment. The front door opened, and Greg walked in, dropping his briefcase by the entrance. Mom? I thought you'd be home by now. Your wife clearly needs help establishing order, Martha said, now eyeing the bookshelf. Look at these novels, so dusty. When I was a new mother. Actually, I interrupted, rising carefully with Emma, we were just about to feed and nap. Greg checked his watch. Before you do that, could you iron my shirts for tomorrow? Mom's right about the chaos. This place is becoming a mess. I looked around at the spotless living room, then down at our daughter, not even half a week old. The familiar pressure built in my chest, but this time it wasn't tears threatening to surface. Your shirts are in our bedroom, I said quietly. Right where you left them. On my side of the bed. Martha clicked her tongue. Really, Iris? This attitude? I had a cesarean section 3 days ago. The words hung in the air. Greg shifted uncomfortably, but Martha waved her hand dismissively. When I had my operation. You had your gallbladder removed 20 years ago, I cut in, my voice steady despite my racing heart. I had my abdomen cut open to deliver your grandchild. While driving myself to the hospital. Greg's phone chimed. He pulled it out, already disconnecting from the conversation. Mom, can you help Iris with the shirts? I have a call to take. As he walked away, Martha stepped closer, lowering her voice. You're being terribly ungrateful. We're only trying to maintain standards. Standards you agreed to when you married into this family. Emma began to fuss, and I held her closer, breathing in her sweet newborn scent. Something crystallized in that moment, a realization as sharp as a surgeon's blade. You're right, Martha. I did agree to certain standards. I moved toward the stairs, each step deliberate and measured. And I think it's time I started enforcing some of my own. What's that supposed to mean? Her voice carried that familiar edge of controlled fury. I paused on the third step, looking back at her. It means I'm going to take care of my daughter now. And tomorrow, we're going to discuss some changes around here. The look of uncertainty that flashed across Martha's face was tiny, barely noticeable. But it was there. And for the first time since I'd met her, I saw something else in her eyes too. Fear. The bank statement trembled in my hands as I stared at the series of transfers. $5,000 last month. $8,000 the month before. All to Martha Thompson's personal account. My wedding ring caught the morning light as I scrolled through Greg's banking app on his carelessly unlocked phone. Each transaction feeling like another betrayal. Emma's soft coos from her bassinet pulled me back to reality. 2 weeks of motherhood, and I'd already learned to function on autopilot, changing diapers while uncovering my husband's lies. The front door opened. Greg's footsteps echoed through the house. Honey? Mom's coming over to help with dinner. He appeared in the doorway, loosening his tie. She thinks you need cooking lessons? I held up the phone, showing the screen. Want to explain these transfers? His face shifted, not with guilt, but annoyance. You went through my phone? You left it unlocked. Answer the question. Mom needed some help with expenses. He shrugged, reaching for the phone. It's our money, Iris. Family helps family. I pulled back. $13,000 in 2 months? While I'm buying generic diapers because you said we needed to budget? She's redecorating her sitting room. His voice hardened. And what's wrong with generic diapers? You're becoming as high maintenance as? As what? As your mother? I laughed, the sound sharp enough to make Emma stir. The woman who spent more on curtains last month than we did on our daughter's entire nursery? Greg's jaw tightened. You don't understand. Mom has certain standards? Standards that apparently cost exactly what we saved for Emma's college fund. I stood up, my cesarean scar pulling tight. Tell me, does your father know about these transfers? Something flickered in Greg's eyes, fear, quickly masked by anger. Leave Dad out of this. Mom's handling the finances while he focuses on retirement. Really? I moved toward the door, phone still in hand. Maybe I should call Henry and ask. Greg grabbed my wrist, hard enough to make me gasp. Don't you dare. In that moment, looking into my husband's eyes, I saw Martha's son completely, a man who'd learned manipulation at his mother's knee. Who'd hide any truth to maintain their carefully constructed facade. Let go. Each word carried the weight of every silent moment I'd endured. He released me, stepping back. You're being hysterical. This is why Mom says you're not ready for. For what? I picked up Emma, holding her close. For the truth about what you and Martha are really doing with your father's money? The color drained from his face. How did you? I didn't. I smiled, feeling a cold satisfaction as understanding dawned in his eyes. But I do now. Clara set her coffee mug down with enough force to make the kitchen table rattle. You need to leave, Iris. Now. I bounced Emma gently, trying to keep her asleep while scanning my friend's face. It's not that simple. Like hell it isn't. She pushed her tablet across the table. Look what I found when I searched Martha's name. The screen showed court records from 15 years ago, a sealed case involving financial fraud. Below that, 3 different businesses that had gone bankrupt under suspicious circumstances, all with Martha Thompson listed as a financial advisor. There's more, Clara continued, her voice dropping. Henry's company is facing an audit. The timing of those transfers matches exactly when the investigation started. My mouth went dry. They're hiding money. Emma stirred against my chest, and I inhaled her sweet baby scent, trying to steady myself. The front door opened, followed by the click of Martha's heels on hardwood. Clara grabbed her tablet, but not before Martha appeared in the doorway, her practiced smile freezing at the sight of my friend. I wasn't aware we had company. Her eyes flickered to the tablet. What are you ladies discussing? Bankruptcy law, I replied, meeting her gaze. It's fascinating how some people hide assets during audits. The color drained from Martha's face, but her smile never wavered. Such dreary conversation for new mothers. Greg tells me you've been emotional lately. Postpartum concerns, perhaps? Actually, Clara stood, gathering her things. We were just discussing Iris's options. Options? Martha's voice sharpened. For protecting her interests. Clara squeezed my shoulder. And Emma's. After Clara left, Martha remained in the doorway, her manicured fingers drumming against the frame. You know, dear, mothers who suffer from postpartum depression often lose custody. Especially when they make wild accusations about respected family members. The threat hung in the air between us. I thought of the documents Clara had shown me, of Greg's complicity, of Henry's ignorance. Of my daughter, sleeping innocently against me. You're right, Martha. I stood carefully, cradling Emma. I should rest. Doctor's orders. She nodded, satisfied. I'll tell Greg you're unwell. Perhaps he should stay at our house tonight. I waited until her heels clicked away before pulling out my phone. 3 quick texts, one to my lawyer, one to Henry's office requesting an urgent meeting, and one to Clara. Start the plan. Tonight. The response came immediately, already on it. Pack light. Destroy this message. I deleted the conversation and looked down at Emma, feeling the weight of what was coming. Martha thought she was playing chess, but she'd forgotten something crucial. A mother protecting her child plays for keeps. And I was done playing by their rules. The locksmith's van pulled away just as Greg's car turned onto our street. I watched through the living room window, my heart hammering against my ribs, Emma sleeping peacefully in her carrier beside me. Greg tried his key 3 times before ringing the doorbell. Then came the pounding. Iris. Open the door. His voice carried through the heavy wood. What the hell is this? I pressed the intercom button. Your clothes are packed in bags on the porch. Take them to your mother's. You changed the locks? Have you lost your mind? More pounding. Let me in. This is my house too. Actually, I kept my voice steady, it's my house. Check the deed. Wedding gift from my parents, remember? The gift you and Martha tried to convince me to put in your name for tax purposes. His phone call to Martha was immediate and predictable. Within 15 minutes, I heard her car screech into the driveway. Iris Thompson. Martha's voice could have cut glass. Open this door immediately or I'll call the police. Go ahead. I shifted Emma to my shoulder as she stirred. I'm sure they'd be very interested in those financial records I found. Especially with the audit coming up. Silence. Then Martha's urgent whispers to Greg. My phone buzzed, a text from Clara, Henry's secretary confirmed your meeting for tomorrow. Documents ready. The pounding resumed, but Greg's voice had lost its edge, replaced by something closer to panic. Iris, please. You don't understand what you're doing. Mom's just trying to protect the family. No, she's trying to protect herself. And you're helping her steal from your own father. Martha's sharp intake of breath was audible even through the door. You spiteful little. I have copies of everything, I cut her off. The transfers, the shell companies, all of it. They're in very safe places. So here's what's going to happen, you're both going to leave. Now. Tomorrow, I'm meeting with Henry. You wouldn't dare, Martha hissed. Try me. I looked down at Emma, drawing strength from her peaceful face. I'm done being the quiet, obedient daughter-in-law. You taught me well, Martha, family protects family. I'm protecting mine. Greg's last attempt was barely a whisper. She's my daughter too. Then prove it. Tell your father the truth. Or I will. I watched through the window as Martha practically dragged Greg to her car, their heated argument carrying across the lawn. As they drove away, I sank to the floor, cradling Emma close, my hands shaking but my resolve stronger than ever. The house keys felt heavy in my pocket, new keys, new locks, new boundaries. Tomorrow would bring its own battles, but for tonight, we were safe. And sometimes, that's enough of a victory to build on. Henry's office felt smaller than I remembered, or maybe it was just the weight of Martha and Greg's presence behind me. Their silence heavy with barely contained rage. Emma slept in her carrier, blissfully unaware of the storm about to break. Financial irregularities? Henry's voice cracked as he studied the documents spread across his desk. Martha, what is this? Martha's perfectly manicured hand reached for the papers. Darling, these are clearly manipulated. Iris is having emotional problems. The transfers are real. I pulled out my phone, showing the banking app. Greg's been moving company funds through personal accounts. Your money, Henry. Ask him where it's going. Greg stepped forward. Dad, I can explain. Explain what? Henry's face had aged 10 years in 10 minutes. That you and your mother have been stealing from me? From our employees' pension fund? Martha's mask finally cracked. We were protecting you. The audit would have. Would have what? Henry's fist hit the desk. Found that my own wife and son were embezzling? The office door burst open. A man in a dark suit entered, followed by two others. Mr. Thompson? I'm Agent Roberts, FBI. We need to discuss some concerning transactions. Martha's scream of rage turned feral as she lunged at me. You vindictive little bitch. I barely had time to shield Emma before Martha's hands wrapped around my throat. The carrier toppled, Emma's cries piercing the chaos as agents pulled Martha away. You ruined everything, she shrieked. Greg, tell them. Tell them what she's done. But Greg stood frozen, watching as agents handcuffed his mother. His eyes met mine, and for the first time, I saw real emotion there, not anger or defiance, but pure, devastating fear. Dad, he whispered. Please. Henry wouldn't look at him. Agent Roberts, my son and wife have full access to all company accounts. I'll cooperate fully with your investigation. As Martha was led away, still screaming, she played her final card. Henry, if I go down, everyone learns about Greg's mistake. About what really happened to that girl in college. The room went silent except for Emma's whimpers. Greg's face drained of color as Henry finally turned to face his son. What girl, Greg? I gathered Emma close, her tiny heart racing against mine. This wasn't victory, it was devastation. I'd wanted justice, but watching this family implode, seeing the pain in Henry's eyes, felt hollow. Martha's laugh echoed from the hallway. Still think you've won, Iris? You've destroyed this family. Hope you're proud of yourself. The worst part was, she might be right. I'd pulled the trigger, but the bullet had torn through all of us. And somewhere in the wreckage of what I'd done, I had to find a way forward, for Emma, for myself, for whatever was left of justice in this mess. The prison visiting room smelled of cheap disinfectant and desperation. Martha sat across from me, her orange jumpsuit a jarring contrast to her perfectly applied makeup. 3 months in custody hadn't dimmed her steel-sharp gaze. Come to gloat? She folded her manicured hands on the table. I came because Greg finally told me about Sarah Mitchell. The name hit like a thunderbolt. Martha's composure cracked, just for a second. The girl from his college days. The one who disappeared. You don't know what you're talking about. I placed a manila envelope on the table. Her parents never stopped looking. They hired private investigators, followed every lead. And one of them found something interesting, security footage of a car. Your car, Martha. The night Sarah vanished. Her laugh was brittle. Is this why you're here? To threaten me with ancient history? I'm here because I finally understand. Greg didn't just help you steal money, you helped him cover up something worse. That's how you controlled him all these years. Martha leaned forward, her voice dropping to a whisper. My son made a mistake. I protected him. That's what mothers do. No. I matched her posture. That's what monsters do. You didn't just help him hide it, you used it to own him. To keep him under your thumb. To make him help you steal from his own father. Everything I did was for yourself. I stood, pressing my hands against the cold metal table. The FBI has the footage now. And Greg? He's talking. About everything. The color drained from Martha's face. He wouldn't dare. He already has. Turns out, when you threatened to expose his secret to get more money last month, he recorded the conversation. Self-preservation, you taught him well. Martha lunged across the table, but the guards were faster. As they restrained her, she screamed, He's my son. I owned his soul. Not anymore. I gathered my things, watching her struggle. You know what the difference is between us, Martha? I protect my child by teaching her to be better. You destroyed yours by teaching him to be you. Her shrieks followed me down the corridor, but they didn't touch me anymore. Outside, Clara waited in her car, Emma cooing in the back seat. How did it go? She asked as I slid into the passenger seat. I watched the prison recede in the side mirror, thinking of Greg in his own cell, finally facing his crimes. Of Henry, rebuilding his company with honest hands. Of Martha, reaping the harvest of her poisoned legacy. It went exactly as it needed to. I reached back to touch Emma's tiny hand. Sometimes justice isn't about winning. It's about breaking the cycle. Clara nodded, understanding in her eyes. Ready to go home? Yes, I said, feeling lighter than I had in years. We are. The divorce papers lay signed on my lawyer's desk, their crisp edges marking the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. Through the office window, I watched Henry playing with Emma in the courtyard below, his silver hair catching the sunlight as he bounced her gently. The settlement's generous, my lawyer said, organizing the documents. Full custody, the house, and Mr. Thompson Sr.'s offer of continued financial support for Emma's future. I nodded, thinking of Martha's upcoming trial and Greg's plea deal. The headlines had been brutal: mother-son fraud scheme leads to murder investigation. Sarah Mitchell's parents would finally have answers. Though not the ones they'd hoped for. A knock at the door interrupted my thoughts. Clara entered, holding an envelope. This came to the house for you. Henry brought it. Inside was a single key and a handwritten note. I recognized Martha's precise handwriting immediately. Safety Deposit Box 247. Some truths should stay buried. Your choice now. My hands trembled as I folded the note. More evidence? More secrets? The power to bury everything deeper or expose it all lay in that small key. What are you going to do? Clara asked softly. Through the window, I watched Henry lift Emma higher, her delighted giggles floating up through the glass. He'd lost everything, his wife, his son, his company's reputation, yet here he was, finding joy in simple moments with his granddaughter. I placed the key on my lawyer's desk. Contact Sarah Mitchell's parents. They deserve to know everything. Even though it might hurt Henry more? Especially because of that. I gathered my things, feeling the weight of the decision settle into place. Real healing can't start until all the poison's drawn out. In the courtyard, Henry looked up and waved. I waved back, thinking of Martha in her cell, of Greg facing his crimes, of all the carefully constructed lies crumbling into dust. They'd thought revenge would taste like victory, but it tasted like truth, bitter and clean and necessary. Ready? Clara asked, holding the door. I took one last look at the key on the desk, at the power it represented, the power to hurt, to hide, to control. Martha's final test, even from behind bars. But I wasn't her. I wasn't Greg. And Emma wouldn't grow up in the shadow of buried secrets. Yes, I said, turning away from the key and toward my daughter's laughter. We're ready. Some might call it revenge, this final unraveling of Martha's web. But as I walked into the sunlight, toward Henry and Emma and whatever future awaited us, I knew it was something else entirely. It was freedom.